Cold open question of the day, Wes Goldberg. What was your favorite series of the NBA playoffs?
Oh, great question. I think it had to be Minnesota and Denver, right? Just
Yeah.
the high level of play, the contrasting styles, the storylines. Nikola Jokic, the defending champ, wearing the belt, being taken down by a young up and coming competitor in Anthony Edwards, and his whole rise to stardom. That's got to be the answer.
I think that is the one. It's that, or if you wanted like to play devil's advocate for anything else, I think it would have to be Knicks Sixers.
Yep.
That's like the only other one that I think is close to that level. But the end part of it, the Jokic, I still think maybe had the best single performance of any player in any playoff game, even though his team ended up losing. The drama of that, the defending champs holding on. There's just a lot there. I just also found myself wondering how many like good series we actually got and thinking about this.
Yeah, shout out to OKC Dallas. That was a 7-game series. We didn't get a lot of those, so wanted to at least mention them.
Cavs Magic 7 games. You know, I'm just kidding. That was not good.
It was a barn burner, huh? Yeah,
no one needs to think about that.
It was sort of a little bit of a disappointing playoffs in that we never really got. I don't think we got a classic series unless we want to count. We could look back on Denver, Minnesota, and be like, yeah, that ended up being very meaningful in sort of the paths that these two franchises took, maybe more so than for Minnesota than Denver. But it's over, man. The NBA season's over. We still got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, ton to come. We're going to do one last look at the Celtics today. I got a little list, and we're going to do a ton of free agency content for you here on the June 19th episode of the Just Basketball Show. Hey there, welcome in to the Just Basketball Show. I am Chris Manning. That is Wes Goldberg. This is your 3 times a week show covering all things hoops. That's NBA, WNBA, trades, free agency rumors. That's our bread and butter right now because we are in silly season full on, and we can't wait. I want to remind you to follow, rate, and review on your podcast app platform of choice. You can hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans at YouTube channel. And check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. And want to tell you, too, that today's episode has support from BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBasketball, and you'll get up to $1,500 on a first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how that works. Step 1, download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. That is all one word. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Wes, before we get full on into free agency and all that, I have a Celtics list. I'm going to try not to go Boston Sports Radio. Okay, I'm not going to go full there, but I'm going to give you just 5 things about this title team. I think that the talk of this team being like a dynasty and all this stuff is going, and one of the best teams of all this stuff is going like a little too far, but there are a lot of things I do like about this team, begrudgingly maybe. So I'm going to give you a list.
Let's do it. List me out.
All right. Number 5. This is the one other teams really can't replicate, hence why it's 5. But Jrue Holiday, I love Jrue Holiday. That is one of my favorite players of the last 10 years of the NBA. Second time he's won a title, the first year on a new team. Fit his role perfectly. Did everything he could have asked. Obviously got rewarded for it as well financially, but I love Jrue Holiday. So it's cool to see him he probably had one of the weirdest summers of anyone in the league. Kind of like a guy who was key in a championship team and then kind of relegated to like hanging out in Portland for a little bit. And then he ends up with the Celtics and all works out for him. But Jrue Holiday, I just love Jrue Holiday. So good for him.
Everybody loves Jrue Holiday.
Not a Horford. Number 4. Long-term vision, I think, is now underrated in the NBA. I'm on this. I think teams, and I understand why this happens. Money's really high. Your players maybe just aren't good enough. We could just say that simply and be like, you know what? You weren't good enough. But the Celtics really stuck through this. They really had multiple iterations of a team that evolved over time. I understand they got the guys in young and they developed them, but they added along the way, and they didn't they could have maybe blown this up a couple years ago. They could have traded Jaylen Brown a couple years ago or something and really changed the path of this or gone more aggressively around Tatum in a different way. They could have frankly even a head coach gone a name brand head coach from the outside who was that's a championship winner. We're going to hire Doc Rivers. We're going to bring him back. We're going to do something like that. Instead, they went with Joe Maz after the Ime Udoka situation. Even going with Udoka when Brad Stevens steps away in itself is trusting the vision of your franchise in some way. I think more teams, I understand the immediacy and maybe not every team can do this, but I think more teams would benefit on the outside looking in from not trying to solve everything in 1 year. This is a multi-year, oftentimes very long process to get where you want to go. This isn't easy.
It's Chris. Brendan and I talked about this a little bit.
Yep, you did.
After the finals, and it does speak to a long-term vision. It speaks to continuity. You look over the last few championships. It wasn't the Brooklyn Nets who haphazardly came together with the whims of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. That team never won anything. It has not been the Clippers that where Steve Ballmer came in and threw a bunch of money at the problem and assembled a couple of guys who had never played together as their as tentpole stars. It has not been the super teams that have succeeded, right? It has been the teams with continuity, whether it's the Boston Celtics, who have been together for so many years, the Denver Nuggets, who had, through trial and error, carved out a chemistry between their two top players in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Before that, it was the Golden State Warriors in 2022.
Yep.
Obviously, they've been together forever. Before that, it was the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis and Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday having played together for a very long time, especially Middleton and Giannis. Continuity really matters, and the only time a sort of quote-unquote super team ever really worked was LeBron James in Miami, and even that took a year to kind of figure it out, and maybe the best coach he's ever played for with Eric Spoelstra, and with that team,
well, maybe the best coach. Look at you hedging on Spo. What's going on here,
I know who I'm
Wes?
talking to. I don't know if you were going to throw Ty Lue out on me.
No.
Easily the best coach he ever played for. I think with the Heat, that was sort of more long-term vision, and that kind of gets me to what you were talking about is one of the things that I've realized. I've covered the Heat, I've covered the Warriors, two of maybe the best run organizations in the NBA, but very differently run, right? Whatever Heat culture is almost the opposite of the Kumbaya, Steve Kerr, Golden State Warriors stuff, right? Spoelstra is going to make you wear knee pads during practice. Steve Kerr just wants to know about your family and how your morning went. And did you nail your morning routine this morning? But the similarities with both organizations, and I think this is very true for the Boston Celtics. To get to your point, was everybody knew what the mission statement was, from the ownership level all the way down to the players. You talk to anybody in those organizations, and they will about anything, and they basically tell you the same answer. And it's not really necessarily a PR spin. It's not PR training. They're not coached up to give you the answers. No, this is how these organizations think. So whether you talk to them about free agency, the draft, why you lost a game, why you won a game, what it takes to win a championship, you get the same answer from everybody in the organization. And that to me speaks to a common vision. And I think a lot of organizations don't have that. More organizations, I would say, don't have that than they do have that. And I think that's a really underrated factor when it comes to team-wide success. And I think you saw that from the Boston Celtics. A buy-in on the mission statement from the ownership suite all the way down to the 15th guy on the roster.
Could not have said it better myself. All right, number 3. I like the Jaylen Brown component of this whole finals run. That we saw his growth in real time. I don't think any player in the league and on the biggest stage, yes, there's smaller stuff for other guys. You could say Luka got better or whatever it is. But from the 2022 finals to now, I don't know if there's a player that improved himself more to make himself feel like he could take over a game or parts of a series more than Jaylen Brown could have. And I don't know if they win the title, Wes, unless you get this Jaylen Brown. The Jaylen Brown that was on their team 2 years ago, particularly with the Porzingis injury, they needed this guy. I don't know if they do this, at least in the same way, where they cruised, really, throughout the whole playoffs without this Jaylen Brown.
I'm about to make a really weird comparison. It reminds me of Lil Yachty a little bit. The Jaylen Brown career arc here, okay? Follow me here, all right? This will make sense.
I love this. Let's go.
Undeniable talent. Jaylen Brown, Lil Yachty. Lil Yachty comes out the gate with Lil Boat and his first couple singles, and we're like, wow, this guy's got an interesting voice, and, the beats are good, and we like the song structure. It's really interesting, but is this just sort of one of those guys who are flash in the pan? It was sort of during that whole SoundCloud era of rap. Like, what's this guy really going to be as a serious long-term musician? Can he last that long? How does he grow? All these things. I don't know that we were thinking about that necessarily at the time when we were just sort of like bopping, but whatever. Jaylen Brown, third pick in the draft out of Cal, all the physical tools you would want, undeniable talent. He got I remember his biggest play, his first year or second year was he got in the playoffs a rebound off his butt, like a really big offensive rebound, the butt rebound, right? And that was sort of his signature play. But I do think eventually both of these guys found their voice, where Lil Yachty came out a couple years ago, I think it was, or 2023 with Let's Start Here. And it was still Lil Yachty, but it was a very abrupt sort of sea change in his style of music. He found his voice. He found his niche. He found how to really lean into his strengths and make them sing. And with Jaylen Brown, I think for years, he was the guy who couldn't dribble to one side of the court. Right, he couldn't handle the ball for more than 4 or 5 dribbles at a time. The shot was pretty inconsistent. Defensively, all the tools not always locked in. This year, he's like, you know what? There are certain things I can't do, and that's okay. Here are the things that I can do, and I'm going to lean into those things, and I'm going to make those things the strengths of my game. And I just think that this year, Jaylen Brown just sort of found his voice as an NBA player. He's never going to be a perfect NBA player. There's always going to be dribbling concerns. They even came up in these finals despite him winning finals MVP. But within the Boston Celtics ecosystem with a 5-out offense where he's not going to be crowded when he's driving into the lane, when he's very often going in one-on-one because, opponents can't leave Boston's shooters on the perimeter, it works, and it's mostly fine. And he just does what he does. And Boston has this beautiful 5-out offense. Everybody screens for each other. And then sometimes Jaylen Brown's like, the hell with this. I'm going to just take the ball and I'm going to put my head down and score. Has become a feature and not a bug in Boston's offense. And he's just found his lane in the NBA. He's never going to be the best player in the league, but he's going to make multiple All-NBA games. And he's going to be maybe one of the best 15 players in the league for a very long time. He's found his voice. That went a little long. Not sure it worked.
No. It was good. You cooked, and I respect it. So I'm now wondering, is this the James Blake collab album that Lil Yachty has coming out? Like that's really my question.
Yeah, I mean, who's to say? Who's the better artist, James Blake or Lil Yachty? Does it even matter?
Yeah, we're just out here.
Does that make Jason Tatum the James Blake? I don't know.
It might. All right, number 2, luck. NBA teams have to get way more lucky than I think anyone is willing to acknowledge. I don't think I acknowledge this until recently, as I kind of just think about how the world works, frankly. But you have to get lucky. It doesn't diminish what they accomplished to just note that they had a good path, and that they also just things broke for them in a way that opens up a door for you. It's about taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you. And even if you just go back in the roster building, Wes, I mean, you could call it success, but it's the fact that there was the way the trades broke for them in the summer is somewhat luck to get Drew Holiday and Porzingis in and be able to find a right home for Marcus Smart and all of that and make that adjustment. There's some luck in that. Getting Derek White for what we got from him, there is some luck and timing in that. Even getting Jaylen Brown and that whole situation with the Markelle Fultz draft and that working out for you, it's that could have ended up completely different. You could have been the one that ended up with Fultz, or you could have had someone different if Philly had just taking Jason Tatum or so, whatever it was. Things just worked out for them in a way over time, and there is some luck baked in all this. And I think acknowledging just sometimes you have to have things break your way that doesn't diminish it, but it's worth noting, I think, in this Boston story.
There's no question that luck plays a factor, right? And you could even look at the team the Celtics played in the finals. Luka Doncic, lucky that the Phoenix Suns took DeAndre Ayton with the number one pick. The Sacramento Kings took Marvin Bagley III with the 2nd overall pick. Lucky that they were able to trade with the Atlanta Hawks to go up and get Luka Doncic. The Mavericks are lucky just to be here. Lucky that Kyrie Irving basically single-handedly torpedoed his own value and ended up getting on the Mavericks for close to nothing in terms of assets that Dallas gave up. There's luck baked into all of this. You can go back even further with the Boston Celtics when they made the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade. Lucky that the Nets bottomed out exactly when they did, right? And so there's a whole lot of luck in here, but there's also a lot of stories of teams that did get lucky and got the piece or two that they probably needed to build around, but weren't able to take advantage of it and ultimately win a championship. There's luck around the league a lot, and maybe it's not even luck. Maybe it's just circumstance. Maybe is a better word for it. It's just stuff happens. Players have to play somewhere, and every once in a while, one of those players is a superstar and can change the long-term outlook for a franchise. But also credit to the Celtics for, pouncing on the Drew Holiday situation, the Kristaps Porzingis situation. I mean, this Boston Celtics team is a team built off of the errors of other front offices, right?
Yeah,
Whether it's the Brooklyn Nets, it's the Washington Wizards, it's even the Milwaukee Bucks not turning the Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday deal into a 3-team deal and just letting the Blazers send Drew Holiday wherever they damn wanted. Everything about this Celtics team is based off of the errors of other front offices, and that's a testament to them, right? That's a testament to Danny Ainge and now Brad Stevens seizing upon those opportunities, right? And so I'm not even trying to take credit away from them. But I think we make the mistake a lot thinking that there's 30 really good general managers in the NBA, and there's just not. There's not 30 good front offices, and the good front offices tend to take advantage of the bad ones.
Agreed. Number one, just want to say Brad Stevens. He's going to have like one of the most interesting basketball legacies when this is all said and done at some point. All these different college to now as a head coach to then he's the architect of the team in a lot of ways to get them over the line, to get them to a title. Didn't win it as a coach, does win it as the head of as a front office. Obviously, a ton more basketball life left in him, one would think. He's just going to ultimately have like a really cool legacy, and like that, he's not the most important part of this because that's the players. But I think tracking him over time, Wes, will be really interesting to see like where his career ends up because he's going to have such a long public basketball life in a way that like we don't get with a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys, when they get the one big job, you get them for like 6 years, and that's their whole legacy. Brad's going to have like 30 years where we're dissecting everything he does, and there's something kind of unique about that in this modern era, I think.
2024 NBA Executive of the Year, well earned. Got that before the championship. Looks even better now that they have the championship.
Bingo. All right, let's move on to free agency matchmaker. And Wes, let's start with Klay Thompson, where Shams has said he's open to all external options in free agency coming up. There has been reporting from Shams and Anthony Slater that there's mutual interest in the Orlando Magic. The Warriors, per this report, have, quote, made it clear they want to bring back Thompson at the right price in the right role, end quote. And my brain went to this more than anything else. It feels super weird to me to imagine Klay Thompson in not a Warriors jersey. Even if I could understand how this happens and like no one stays together forever, particularly in the modern NBA. But imagining like Klay Thompson running off a pin down, like Paolo Banchero can like feed him off a screen is like one of the weirdest things I can imagine. And it'll take me like a month to get used to the regular season next year if this is where this goes.
Yeah, in terms of the visual component of it all, doesn't it feel like if this happens, the Orlando Magic have to go back to the pinstripe jerseys?
Yes.
It's the only jersey that Klay Thompson will look good in, at least. Or
yes.
Not good in, but it would be weird if they were in the new Magic jerseys. At least if he were in the old one, you'd be like, well, at least that's cool. So, I don't know. That's where I'm at. In terms of the right price and the right role for Klay Thompson for the Warriors, just offer him the Draymond contract, 4 years, $100 million. It keeps him there until he's 38 years old. Does it look bad 2 and 3 years, three or 4 years from now? Probably. Yeah, I don't know. But again, I guess the salary cap is going up, the TV rights deal, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't rule it out that he leaves Golden State, although, and to be clear here, I used to cover the Warriors. Mm-hmm. I still have some contacts there. My days of reporting on the Warriors are long gone, but I did ask around on this a little bit. And from what I understand, I think Klay Thompson's preference is definitely to stay in the Bay Area. He wants to finish his career with the Warriors. But he knows that there's no guarantee of that happening, right? He's not going to take a lowball offer. He's not going to be insulted. And that's why I think you have to at least at the floor offer him the Draymond Green deal. You can at least look Klay Thompson in the face and say, this is what we paid Draymond. We're willing to pay it to you. Even understanding that we're going to take you through your age 38 season, but essentially this means you get to retire with the Warriors, right? You have that option now. But I do think, I'm going to be careful how I word this. I do think he's thought about what it would be like to play for the Orlando Magic and live in Central Florida. So I think that's on. I think he's at least thought about it, and that's why those are the two teams to me that, and it's one of those teams that end up with Klay Thompson at the end of this. I still think he ends up in Golden State. I still think they can't break that thing up.
Yeah, and I don't think they can. Like I think even if like the money part of it, I understand there's a ton of money on the line there with them, and like 4 years is, if it's 3 years, if it's 4 years, whatever it is, that's going to take Klay like up to 37, 38. Lord knows what like he's going to look like when he's 37, when he looks like what he is right now at 34. I understand like you're being very scared about that if you're Golden State. I'd be scared about that if I was the Magic,
If
like
it's not
I'd be
Klay
nervous
Thompson,
about that too.
What would you pay him a year? His name's not Klay Thompson, it's Klay Bompson, right? Just a different, but this player, the player that came off the year that he had.
I'm gonna try to spoonerism this. Klay, I can't even. The KH is really fucking with me.
Yeah,
but,
that's a tough one. Yep,
that's tough. Is it like mid level? Is it like 15? Like is it like it's around that? You know what I mean? Because it's a guy who is defensively is kind of a liability at this point to some degree. Like can give you moments where he can be big, but like you can't use him as a weapon anymore. And he's been very up and down the last couple of years. And on top of the injury history at his age, it's like there is risk built into whatever contract he's going to sign next.
And there is something to be said. This sounds weird, but he might actually benefit from a change of scenery because he's entrenched in that Warriors everything. This is where I won my rings. He's still looking at Devin Booker and pointing to his fingers, right? And if he were to go to the Orlando Magic, you didn't win. You're a champion, but they ain't, right? You don't get to walk around with that swagger anymore because you're playing for the Orlando Magic. But that could be beneficial for him to just say, you know what, just a career reset. I'm going to play off of Paolo Banchero. I'm going to play off of Franz Wagner. I'm going to teach them how to win in the playoffs. I'm just going to be a souped-up Joe Ingles, which sounds like an insult almost. I even hate saying it. But, man, it seems strange to think of Klay Thompson being a beneficiary of a change of scenery, but there is something to be said about that. And if I'm the Warriors, I am more worried about paying Klay than I am paying Draymond, because at least I know Draymond, no matter what, defensively is bringing something to the table, whereas Klay, there was times last year where he was a complete liability on the court. And if you do pay him $20+ million a year, there is sort of that pressure to be like, well, we got to keep this guy on the court. And there was a lot of times where he wasn't even closing games. And guys like Brandon Podziemski and Moses Moody or Jonathan Kuminga were playing over him. So I don't think it's a done deal that Klay Thompson stays there. I just think that every basketball fan doesn't want to see Klay anywhere else. Everybody wants to see him stay in Golden State. But if you just take the emotion part out of it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to keep him around. And that's the tough part of it. And for the record, I don't think that the Warriors operate without emotion. I think that they are an emotionally driven team in a lot of aspects, but they also traded away Andre Iguodala when Kevin Durant left for nothing, and they just sent them to Memphis. This is a team that has parted with legends before.
Yeah, teams have to do this at a certain point. And in Klay's, I think Klay, I would guess, feels a little bit different to them. But Mike Dunleavy's the running the front office now. Kerr, I know, has input, but it's not Bob Myers. This is not the person who put this whole thing together ultimately, right? Like this is someone different.
That's a good point. Does Mike Dunleavy want to just make his own team? Does he just want to
entirely possible.
Does he want to manage the last burning embers of the thing that Bob Myers built? I don't know, right? If you're Mike Dunleavy, don't you want to say, well, I can construct a championship roster? And what does that look like if you're the Warriors? And does that look like a team with Klay Thompson on it? So I think the part of the Klay Thompson part of this, it's not in a vacuum, right? It's what else is out there for the Warriors. What do you do with the Chris Paul contract? What happens with Andrew Wiggins? Can you move some of these young players and assets to go make a major upgrade? No matter what happens, the Warriors need to make a major upgrade this offseason if they're going to keep their window open at all. And I think that's also going to be part of the equation when you're trying to figure out, okay, what can we sort of earmark for Klay Thompson over here, understanding we have a lot of business to do over there.
The Magic part of this, too, I think is interesting just because, like, I understand why they would want someone like Klay, like, get the veteran in, to help the young guys along, give us some shooting. We have the defensive infrastructure to cover for him. It's also not exactly what I think I would want if I am them. What I would want if I was them, I'm trying to prioritize this summer, is probably, it's more than anything else, I think it is a playmaker. It is a creative person. It is someone to, like, ease the burden and make Paolo and Franz's life less hard. Like, that is what I think I want if I'm them. But is that available in this market? It's not real. It's not real. There's not a Van Vliet out there you can throw a bunch of money at this summer on the free agent point guard market. Like, Tyus Jones would be, like, fine, but is he, like, demonstrably different than what you already have? Probably not. Klay would be like this, like, swing that tells your guys that you're serious, and it gives you something, and it gives you, like, a name leader in your locker room. Like, I get it, even if it isn't perfect. I do understand, like, why Orlando, with cap space, is the team that might want to do this. Even if I think there's risk, even if it's not exactly what I would want if I was them.
I understand everybody wants to put a point guard in Orlando. I've pushed back on that a little bit. I don't think they need. I would actually not go that direction if I were the Magic. I would be very cautious about putting a lead ball handler on that roster right now, because what's the goal if you're the Orlando Magic? Is it to win the championship next year? Of course it's not. It's to get to a point where 3, 4, 5 years from now, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are ready to win you a championship, where they have taken that Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown type of leap. And I think part of that growth process is getting better as a ball handler. You look at what the Celtics have done; they don't have a lead ball handler, right? It's on Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown all to do it. And I think the Magic are built as a baby Celtics in a lot of ways, right? You've got Jalen Suggs there, you've got Paolo Banchero, you've got Franz Wagner. I think you need to put them under the stress test for a few years here to grow as players. And I think if you put a lead ball handler in that situation, it takes that onus off of them to grow in that way. And I think for the Magic to hit their championship type ceiling, those guys all need to just do that. And it's going to be messy, and that's okay. It's all right if it's messy, and it's all right if it's ugly for a couple of years. I think they need to do that. And for Klay Thompson, I think that adding a player like Klay does make that easier, right? Because the biggest problem in Orlando last year is they had no space to do all that stuff. They had no space to dribble and figure it out. Spread the floor a little bit.
Got to the playoffs, couldn't score in the playoffs at all, and like
couldn't score in the playoffs, and they just nobody on that roster could make a three. Like, their best lineup had Gary Harris in it, right? When they moved Gary Harris into the starting lineup, that's when things started to click, and you're like, really, Gary Harris was the skeleton key for you guys? So if you get a souped up version of Gary Harris and get Klay Thompson in there, who outside of Steph Curry is the most respected shooter in the NBA, despite the numbers and despite the aging, like, you're not playing off of that guy. So I think that would create a little bit more space for Paolo and Franz to grow. So I actually like that a lot for them. I would be really cautious to add that typical, archetype of a primary playmaker into that mix right now.
Wes, I got to throw two bits. I need a breaking news sound, Wes. We got to swerve and come back. We got some breaking news. Monty Williams out in Detroit. He's gone.
Wow.
I don't know why I yelled for that. That was a little much. But Monty Williams.
It's surprising.
Yeah, but Monty Williams, per Woj, has been fired by the Detroit Pistons. 5 years and over $65 million American on the deal left. Trajan Langdon now gets to hire his own coach to lead the Detroit Pistons. Wes, what's your reaction to Monty Williams out in the Detroit Pistons?
The NBA is cold-blooded, man. I mean, Trajan Langdon, the guy who worked with Monty Williams in New Orleans, came in. When he was hired, a lot of people thought, oh, well, that probably bodes well for Monty Williams, right? They have a great relationship. Monty Williams' time in New Orleans was pretty good, like all these things. And
They just hired that shooting coach like 3 days ago?
Yep, and Langdon was like, I don't care about our history, dude. You're out of here. So he had been taking a couple of weeks to make this decision. I don't know what that looks like if you're a general manager. Are you going back and watching film on Monty Williams' challenges and sideline out of bounds plays. I would imagine that you're probably talking. I joke. You're probably talking to other people in the organization. You're talking to players. You're trying to get a pulse for what it is. I don't love this for the Pistons. It's really late in the process in terms of finding a coach. Even the Lakers are having a hard time finding the coach. Is the next move here that the Pistons are going to offer Hurley a major deal, the one that the Lakers didn't?
The Lakers, I think the Lakers having a hard time finding the coach is them being the Lakers and
it is
clearly wanting someone who is doing the NBA Finals. You know what I mean?
There's not a hot name out there either, and it is late in the process, and we have a week until the NBA draft. I thought it would have. If you were going to do this, I felt like you just had to pull the trigger on this a couple of weeks ago. Or what are you in the rush for? You're going to stink next year too if you're the Pistons. What are you doing? Just let Monty Williams ride out one more year. Don't flush this money down the toilet. And then maybe there's some hot coaching prospect out there next summer that you can go get. So unless you I'm very interested to see who the Pistons end up hiring for this position. Maybe they have a coaching candidate that they're really interested in, right? Nobody was talking about Joe Mazzulla as the next hot young coach, and then he ends up taking over the Celtics, wins a championship a year later. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be interesting to see who they hire here, but it just seems like a really odd timing to be making this decision.
Yeah, it feels like you could have done this earlier. Maybe like I don't know what I mean. Maybe they won't ever tell us this, and we'll see what the reporting ultimately says. But like I would like to know what was uncovered. That sounds a little sinister, but like what they ended up changing their mind as this went on. I do, Wes, though, like the idea. Like, I understand Cade's about to get his rookie max, and there has been this kind of reported pressure that they want to win now, and Monty would fit that more. I do just like the idea of this team. Like, I don't, is it David Adelman? Is it Micah Nori? Is it like, or do they, whoever they think their Will Hardy is, their Mark Dagan, like, I prefer that than Monty Williams. And that's not totally fair to Monty Williams. There's just something about that I do prefer. And and last year, just the vibes were so bad. With that whole team that if you just said, like, we got to eat the money, vibes reset, like, in some ways, like, I understand that. Because once you know this, I think most people like watching this, listening to this know this. Once a coach like loses the team, or like they don't want to, like they tune him out and things get weird, particularly I think now, you can't come back. It gets kind of done.
Yeah. And that might be the thing that they ultimately decided. Is it Sam Cassell, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Chris Quinn. I just hope it's not like a Mark Jackson situation.
Oh my God.
It's go hire a coach who has some bona fides, yes, but also some upside, and has not had a history of burning bridges. Whether Monty Williams doesn't have the best history in terms of getting along with his players either, right? It wasn't an awesome exit out of Phoenix. We'll see what happens. I don't know. The Pistons thing is a mess. Maybe they make the right hire. That's all I got on this.
Yeah. We're another bit of breaking news, Wes. I wanted the sound effect. Can I get this? Yep. It's okay. Pascal Siakam is going to intends per Woj, interesting language there, I guess, 4-year, $189.5 million max contract. He will sign it when he can, when the moratorium ends on July 6th. So Siakam, first day after, like 2 days after the finals, players can negotiate with their own teams. Siakam sounds like he's going to extend for the long term with the Indiana Pacers. Probably not really a surprise, I think, ultimately, but I think a good deal for both sides, even if that dollar figure, we're going to start seeing dollar figures that make me go, what? And this is one of them?
I guess, the wording intends is just because of the moratorium part of this.
Yeah.
It makes sense. This is a lot less surprising than the Monty Williams news, right? Like, as soon as all the reporting around Pascal Siakam and the trading of him before the deadline was, he's going to let you know if he's willing to resign there. And reportedly, he was not going to be willing to resign in Golden State, and he was going to be willing to resign with the Pacers. This is the least shocking thing ever. The whole, do you offer Pascal Siakam the max? Is he worth it? Yeah, you just traded everything for him, and you're the Pacers. Pay him the max. I'm glad they did it this way. No haggling. None of this. Just, hey, we like you. It worked. We got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Here's all the money that we're allowed to give you. Let's get this thing done. Now let's work on improving the team around you and Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, I think this makes sense, and I think like where they ended up in the conference finals, Halliburton being where he is, I think finding a more true identity that they found towards the end. They're like there's something they're building there that makes sense to me, and this kind of had to get done. Like otherwise, why did you trade for him? Like you just kind of have to.
Exactly.
Like at a certain point, you just kind of have to pay him. So I like this for them. It's a good deal. But NBA free agency kicking off. Let's get back to matchmaker, Wes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Paul. We should just say Klay Thompson. Where do you think he ends up?
Golden State.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about Paul George, who I think is going to the Philadelphia 76ers. Who just it feels like that's where we're going. The Clippers, Wendy said on television, I want to shout out our guy Brendan for pulling these as he prepped this for us because he's a king. He says, like, Wendy said on television that the Clippers are very aware that somebody's going to offer Paul George a 4 years max, whether it's the 76ers or the Magic. A team could even trade for him. The Clippers all know it's going to go on, and they're still not making the offer. The Knicks, per Fred Katz, have kicked George's name around before, according to league sources, but never seriously pursued him in a deal. Katz notes he's a little bit older, 5 years older than anyone in the current rotation, has that history of injuries. I mean, Joel Embiid, like, not being able to control his, like, smile and all of that on the broadcast just feels like $100,000 fine that we're going to get in, like, 2 months.
He didn't say
but
nothing.
It feels like Paul George. It's the body language, Wes. You know, it's like
he saw something. He just saw something interesting. You know, there was somebody he recognized.
Yeah. You know, when you're out and you meet someone that you're interested in, that's also how I react. That's the vibes I was giving. Is you run it, you meet someone you're excited to talk to. Is the vibe there?
Right. Yeah. Saw a pretty girl. That's all.
Yeah, 100%. But it feels like Paul George is leaving the Clippers. Like that, it just feels like this is where this is going. Like he should, at his age, just balance like trying to win a championship versus like getting 4 years max money. And if he's going to get 4 years max money from Philly and play with Embiid and Maxey, like I can't argue against it. That's the best chance for him to win a championship. I really can't.
So there's the Paul George angle of this and the Clippers angle of this. I guess we'll start with the Paul George part of this. And you're right, dude. Like if I'm Paul George, yes, I've wanted to play in Los Angeles. That has been my stated goal my entire career. But I've also had opportunities before getting traded to the Clippers to play in Los Angeles and didn't take it. I re-upped to stay in Oklahoma City one time instead of going to sign with the Lakers and LeBron James. So he's always had an eye for Los Angeles, always appreciated being in Los Angeles. He runs his podcast out of Los Angeles. But he's also been willing.
Bev Studios available in Philly, probably.
I'm sure they do. I don't know. It makes sense as a career move to leave because the Clippers thing feels like it hasn't worked. It's been 5 years there since he got traded there. Kawhi can't stay healthy. And I do wonder how frustrated Paul George is with the entire Kawhi Leonard situation, right? Because Ty Lue wears that on his sleeve. Like, I don't know when Kawhi, how many times, in paraphrasing here, but in so many words, Ty Lue over and over saying, I don't decide when Kawhi Leonard plays. Kawhi Leonard decides when Kawhi Leonard plays. And then I find out right before the game. And that can't be easy for a teammate either. As hard as it is on a coach, it can't be easy on Paul George, who is like, okay, one night I'm the number one option, another night I'm the number two option, and then because sometimes James Harden doesn't show up. I mean, he plays all the games, but he doesn't play well in all the games. So it's got to be frustrating for Paul George. I would be a little weary if I was Paul George based on my history with injury-plagued superstars hitching my wagon to Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. I would be a little worried about doing that. But at least Embiid is still young-ish. He's 30 years old. Tyrese Maxey is on the rise. And they have the salary cap slot and the motivation to pay me all the money that I can get. And if you're Paul George, I guess there's not other viable options, right? You're not going to go and sign in Detroit or San Antonio or Utah in their cap space or Oklahoma. And maybe not even Oklahoma City. You've kind of been there, done that. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him. So, yeah, I kind of get it from the Paul George perspective. From the Clippers' perspective, unless you have anything else on Paul George, but
no, I mean, I think we've talked on the show before about like the best basketball fits for him, and I think the Philly one is just like, I really think the Philly thing is like basketball wise, Philly is perfect for Paul George.
So from the Clippers' perspective, the thing you always hear is, well, Steve Ballmer, he's opening up that new arena next year. He doesn't want to do it without the stars. If that's the number one reason why you would pay guys a lot of money, it's a bad reason. right? That's
Yeah.
throwing bad money after bad. What like the top reason for bringing back Paul George should be he's an awesome basketball player. But that does not sound like that's the reason why the Clippers would be motivated. And by the way, I guess that's why these negotiations are what they are, and they are a little hesitant to give him the full max. So if I'm the Clippers, I think I'd be okay walking away from this. It does sting that you had signed Kawhi Leonard to the long-term contract extension, and then you're going to lose.
And Kawhi's like, they're going to get that done, and then it's been like months since then.
And James Harden, by the way, also a free agent, and it wouldn't be and he has every expectation that the Clippers are going to pay him, but it wouldn't be the first time he was allegedly lied to. So, Paul George, he was awesome last year. I think I had him on my third team All NBA, played 74 games, but before that, 56 games, 31 games, 54 games, 48 games. Like, this guy's never been healthy either. So if you're the Clippers, it's hard to rebuild even if Paul George leaves. If he leaves, it's not like you have that money sitting around to offer somebody else. It's not how the salary cap works. Most people know that. But it's still a lot of money to pay a guy who hasn't been on the court a whole lot. And if the only reason that you can come up with to bring him back is we just want his name on the flags on the street outside of our arena when we open it up next year, if that's the number one reason, you should probably just let him walk because it's not a good enough reason.
Yeah, I think the other challenge I would look at from the Clippers' perspective is, okay, if you're not bringing back Paul George, let's say I think they bring back Harden. There's been like the Chris Paul flirtation kind of like out there if he ends up leaving Golden State. I personally just bring back Russ. Like, honestly, like, let's not do the Chris Paul thing. Just like Russ has been good for them. I have the same people that aren't watching on YouTube, Miss West, just like literally ducking out of sight, clutching his head. It was great.
Do they have access to Basketball Reference before the year 2014? Or I mean, after the year 2014? Like, what is this team that they're building?
Yeah, I don't. This is the thing. Like, if you're gonna move on from Paul George, I think you're also realizing they're like, hey, maybe our team's like a little bit older than it should be. Maybe we need to refresh this in some way. But they don't really have like a good way of doing that, I think, is also the problem. That's why like the trade part of this, Wes, to me is really interesting. Because if you could finagle like anything, if Paul George is like, hey, I'm dipping, and you could finagle like anything of value out of this, I would be doing it if I'm the Clippers. Even if it's like the crappiest return of all time, just to say like we are understanding that we have to think for the future just a little bit. I would be probably trying to do it just as a PR win, more even if that's the whole thing.
And there is a little bit of a long-term planning aspect of this too. If Paul George walks and you sign Harden to a deal that's maybe a 2-year super lucrative contract, maybe it's not that long-term, you have an opportunity in the summer of 2026, which could be a huge free agent summer, depending on extensions that may or may not happen elsewhere. You'd have opportunity to basically be the Sixers of that year, where you would have upwards of $60 million in cap space. So you would be able to rebuild around that point when basically everybody becomes all your books outside of Kawhi Leonard basically free up. So, and then even then, Kawhi would be on an expiring contract. And, you know, maybe there's something that you could do with that so you can even create even more salary cap flexibility. Basically rebuild the entire roster. You could potentially do that in 2026. So, but if you do sign Paul George and James Harden to 3-4 year extensions here, that obviously becomes a lot tougher. So I guess what I would ask for the Clippers is, what's your long-term goal? Is it just to fill seats the first year at this arena, or to maybe give up on this experiment, which I still think was the right trade for the record. It just didn't work out, but it made them wholly relevant in a way that they weren't before, right? And so you did all those things, and you got the arena. You would have never gotten this arena. You never would have done all this stuff if you didn't pull off all that stuff you did in 2019. So I think it did sort of from a business sense work, but then do you just say, you know what? It didn't exactly work, but we still have Kawhi and James Harden for a couple of years. We can make a run at the playoffs. We could still be a playoff team, and that'll be good enough. And then in 2026, 2027, do we look to maybe spin this thing off and rebuild?
They did keep Ty Lue this summer as well, which I think they needed to do. Like, I think like if you're going to keep him and you're bringing in Jeff Van Gundy, which has been reported post the finals, he's going to be the top assistant on that staff. Like, that skews also like a win now kind of thing as well, which I think is interesting. Like, I don't know if you're keeping Ty, who I think just is about chasing championships, and you bring in Van Gundy. I don't think Van Gundy was. I mean, maybe he would have been, but it seemed like he was working with Boston, and now he's working with the Clippers. It's like, I don't know if that guy is at this point in his life and his career like enthused about a rebuild. So there's something to, I think they're going to try to like run this. But I don't know what that looks like. Maybe
So
they're
you
the
mentioned-
surprise team. Does something this summer though.
They could be.
Trade of some kind.
Yeah, they definitely could be. Maybe there's a sign and trade out there with Paul George. I don't know. That helps them sort of retool around Kawhi and James Harden. You mentioned win now, though, and that brings me to my list for the show.
Okay, love it. Let's do it.
Top 5 championship window teams. Are you ready?
Yes,
I got a couple
can't wait.
honorable mentions for you. So this is basically the teams that need to act with the most urgency because their championship window is open now, and it might not be for much longer, or really just because it's open now. 2 honorable mentions: the Lakers and the Warriors.
Yeah,
They're only honorable mentions because I'm not sure the window is actually open right now. And they are under pressure to try to open that window, but they're honorable mentions because I couldn't, in good faith, put them on a list of teams whose windows are actually open. And that's why they're honorable mentions. They could do stuff this summer that does open the window, but it's not open right now.
But I think they have LeBron James. One has LeBron James, one has Steph Curry. Like, I think they're obviously, like, there's going to be expectation attached to that. So I think that's right.
Number 5 is the Clippers. And I kind of wanted to put them in an honorable mention, but at least with the Lakers, you've got Anthony Davis. At least with the Warriors, you've got some young pieces that you like. So you don't necessarily have to make the most of this window. It does feel like there's at least some long-term planning happening there. I don't know if it's a ton to get excited about if you're fans of those teams, but at least there's something there. With the Clippers, there's nothing there 3 years, 4 years from now. The cupboard's bare. They ain't nothing there. It's all about these next 2 years, and that's why you got to maximize it now, even if I think they're not they fooled me in January and February. I was fooled with everybody else. I said, wow, this team actually could win the championship. I said I would never trust a team with Kawhi Leonard on it as its number 1 star. And you know what? I'm going to stick to that. There's nothing they can do outside of actually hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy that would lead me to believe that the Clippers are an actual contender. I will never believe it again until it actually happens. And if I end up being wrong, that's okay because I bet I'll be right. So anyway, that's the Clippers. They're number 5 anyway. Number 4, the Boston Celtics. Only urgent because the value in repeating is huge. I think you can never take these things for granted. We thought the Heat would be a dynasty with the big 3. We thought the Warriors would be rattling off championships after they won Kevin Durant. The Heat only won 2 with D. Wade, LeBron James, and Chris Bosh. The Warriors only won 2 with Steph and Kevin Durant. They won 2 other ones with Steph and without Kevin Durant, but they only won 2 with Steph and Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Nothing is guaranteed. It's really hard to do this. You have this team now. Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford are still there. This team is going to get priced out at some point. It's just going to get too expensive. These players are going to get too old. The Drew Holiday contract is not going to look good 3 or 4 years from now. It's going to be tough. Now is the time to do it. Do it now. They're under a lot of pressure to get it done next year, despite the fact that they just won. Number 3 is the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yep.
Just got to do it. Just got to do it. Number 2, the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
Luka's still that dude. Kyrie is still good enough. I think they do need to make one more trade, one more acquisition this offseason. Maybe upgrade the Derrick Jones Jr. spot. Get somebody on that team who can hit an above-the-break three-pointer.
Can I just say, Bobby Marks, on his ESPN like free agency thing, had like a 2-year, $44 million contract for Derrick Jones Jr., and I'm just like, what are we doing?
No, that sounds like a 2016 contract to me. That sounds like $40 million to Tyler Johnson. Like that don't work. I don't know. And I like Derrick Jones Jr. fine, but I do think they need a more proven 3-point shooter in that spot. And bring back
to be clear,
Derrick Jr. if you
the
can.
The most Dallas can offer him is like $5 million. This is like another team coming in and being
unless they
like,
unlock the taxpayer mid-level or the non-taxpayer mid-level, and then maybe they could do it. So it might be tough to bring in. And you know what? As much as I like Derrick Jones Jr. and as important as he was to that team, I wouldn't stress that much over it. I think there's other guys that you can find who are better at that position, and that's what I would be looking at for Dallas. Is not bringing it back and sort of running it back, but maybe making a noticeable upgrade to the roster. Okay, and number 1 is the Milwaukee Bucks. Got to do it.
yeah, easy.
Got to do
good
it.
list.
Yep. Giannis, Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez. Lopez and Middleton in particular, probably on their last fumes as high-level NBA players. Giannis, still one of the best 3 players in the league. Damian Lillard, it sounds like if he enters next year in shape, you could see even better. By the way, percentages of Doc Rivers completely overstating the entire Damian Lillard came to camp out of shape story. Like what percentage of that was Doc Rivers overstating things, and what percentage of that was absolutely true? I feel like it was 60% embellishment by Doc, right?
Yeah, I was going to go like 65, 70% embellishment.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely some truthiness to it, but there's always that Doc Rivers embellishment there. So that's my list.
Yeah, that's a good list. I think the Bucks have to be number one.
Yep.
That's like the easy, yeah. It's good. All right. Where's Paul George going?
I kind of hate the Philadelphia 76ers thing. It wouldn't surprise me if he ended up there. That's probably... up until this week, I thought it was going to be the Clippers, but you laid out a really good argument. If the Clippers didn't do it yet, then are they going to do it? Are they going to make it clear that they're going to offer him the max? It feels like if they were going to do it, they would have done it already. So if Paul George wants that money, go to Philly.
I would be looking at a Sixers title future. As cursed as that sounds, it's like plus 650 right now, and I'm like, I kind of, or to think to win the East for them is plus 650. And I was like, kind of like that. Just get in on the floor pre Paul George, and just betting on Embiid breaking through 1 year. It's like a thing I would probably do every year.
Title odds 12 months out is a dangerous game. Just gonna say
shit.
that.
It's absolutely sicko shit. It's absolutely sicko shit, Wes. Yes. I was looking at this. I was like, got some takes.
There's some value here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's I'm gonna call that number. All right. Last thing today, Brandon Ingram.
Okay.
The reporting on this is from the New Orleans Times-Picayune, Christian Clark. They don't want to pay him the full 4-year extension, $208 million. They do not want to pay him $52 million a year. And I agree. I don't know if I want to be the team paying Brandon Ingram $52 million a year. I think Brandon Ingram's good. I think there's a role for him in the league on a good team. I think that is possible. But $52 million for him, when you're thinking about aprons and stuff, like he's the class of guy that I would be trying to like carve some money out of that contract for, even if that's not super fair to him. But it's like that's kind of what I would do, and it just feels like he's going to get traded. The question is where.
So Seth Partnow of The Athletic, he does his like player tiers every year, and he explained players like Brandon Ingram really well. He called them like quadruple A players, where they're too good for the minors in baseball. They're too good for the minors, but not good enough to play in a every night rotation for a Major League Baseball team. And that's sort of what a guy like Brandon Ingram is he's got all the qualities of a star, but he's not quite that star. And so you don't want to pay him like a star, right? He's like in between a role player and a superstar. And it's a really hard place for a player to exist. And it's an even harder place for an organization that's faced with the question of whether or not you're going to pay this guy, because the talent is undeniable, but the results have not spoken for themselves, right? You can't sit there if you're the Pelicans and be like, everything we've done with Brandon Ingram has been awesome. It's the results haven't necessarily been there. I don't know if you're another organization that you could. I don't know if I just have a fundamental misunderstanding of who Brandon Ingram is as a basketball player, but I'll read some of these Bleacher Report trade idea pieces, and it'll be like, Brandon Ingram to this team, and it'll be 3 first-round picks going back to New Orleans. And I'm like, 3 first-round picks for Brandon Ingram and the right to pay this guy $50 million a year? To me, this guy's a salary dump guy.
Yeah.
Not 3 first-round picks. And again, he's a fine basketball player, can hit a bunch of mid-range shots, stuff like that. And I really like the progress he made at the end of the season 2 years ago.
Yes.
And so, as a playmaker, I definitely think that there's a ceiling to hit there. But I don't know. Here's my idea. If we're going to do the matchmaking part of this, New Orleans, I wouldn't pay them. It doesn't make any sense. You've got Trey Murphy, you've got Herb Jones. Get those guys in the starting lineup. Move on from Brandon Ingram. Find a new guy who fits with Zion Williamson. I wasn't early on this thing, and I was probably too stubborn on this, where when they got Zion, everybody was like, well, you got to trade Brandon Ingram because it's Zion's team now. And I was like, well, can we at least see how it works? And I was pretty much on that for a couple years. I was like, let's just see how it works, right? Because he's like, well, you can't have 2 guys that need the ball. And I'm like, well, eventually you do need 2 guys who can do something with the ball. It can't just be one guy and then a bunch of guys who don't do anything with the ball. But 2 years later, I'm here. It doesn't work with Ingram and Zion. So, again, maybe I was late on it, but I'd rather be late than early. So, in terms of matchmaking bit here, Here's my idea.
Okay.
We've got the expansion teams coming into the league, right?
Oh my!
At some point, we're gonna get Las Vegas and Seattle. That's where you put players like Brandon Ingram and Zach LaVine and these guys that these teams don't know what to do with. Send them to the expansion teams. Let Seattle build around Zach LaVine and let Vegas build around Brandon Ingram.
Does he get like is he get a sabbaticals? Like, does he get to like chill at like the former G League Ignite training complex for you? Like, what's the deal here?
No, I mean you just got to deal with it for a year. You just got to deal with it if you're the Pelicans. But let's get these expansion teams in here. Let's do it quickly. And if you were, let's just do it now. Just do it now. Just do it. And if you're the Bulls, you just get a jail out of free card. You get nothing back for Zach LaVine, but you don't got to pay him. You don't got to worry about it. Not your decision anymore. Congrats. If you're the Pelicans, you get nothing back from Brandon Ingram. You just don't have to deal with it anymore.
This is like donating that jean jack you don't like anymore to Goodwill. Like, Wes, this is what this feels like.
It's Brandon Ingram is just a type 2 trucker jacket that I've had sitting in the bottom of my closet, and I'm just sending it to Vegas. And it's like, I don't need this anymore. I don't even wear this. I don't even need this. I got other jackets that I want to wear. Younger jackets, even cheaper jackets.
Jackets that aren't going to cost $15 a year.
Jackets that don't take touches away from Zion Williamson.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming, Wes, and that's really good. That's really good. The thing with Ingram too is like the teams that like have a reason to be aggressive this summer and trade for him. I don't love the like if I'm Philly, I want like the OG Anunoby apparently isn't happy with his offer with the Knicks. Okay, I'd be more interested in like OG than even with the injury concerns than I would Ingram. I think. Yep. I would be more interested in Paul George. Obviously, I would be more interested in if I'm like the Spurs and I want to upgrade the roster around Victor Wembanyama. I'm trying to trade for Darius Garland or someone like that more than I am Brandon Ingram. Like, even the Hornets, like, there's been, like, I've seen, like, some Reddit posts, people debating, like, would, like, you trade the number 2 pick in this draft for Ingram? And it's like, what is that accomplishing if you're Charlotte? Right. Like, I get, like, you're paying LaMelo and him, like, a ton of money for what? Like, without, like, there's, like, so much risk and financial commitment right off the bat, even if it's splashy. It's hard to find, like, the right fit. The Ringer put this in their NBA offseason thing. His role in this offseason was, quote, every buyer's preferred backup plan, end quote. And like that kind of feels like what this is gonna be. He's gonna get traded for like less than the dollar on the value for a team that didn't get their A+ thing. Like the Cavs don't get what they want. And like maybe they like do like a Garland Ingram thing and like settle for that. Or like the Sixers, like it doesn't work out with Paul George and whatever. They go to Ingram because they have to do something this summer around Embiid.
Yeah, and I hear all that, but then you have to pay him like he was your number one option.
Yeah,
right?
We live in there's no room to negotiate.
He wants the money, and I get it. Go try to get it, but man, like, I don't know if I'm an organization that he's even my plan B. Right? It's really hard. I'll say this: it's easy to talk yourself into Brandon Ingram as the player, as a fit on your roster. If I'm a team like Atlanta or Detroit or whatever, Charlotte even. Like I'm like, yeah, it's San Antonio. This guy makes sense for our roster from a basketball perspective. But then a year from now, we got to pay him a $50 million salary? No way. There's no way I'm doing that. So I think in the NBA media space, we do this matchmaking thing where like, well, it doesn't make sense here, so it has to make sense here. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense anywhere. And I do wonder if there's going to be some sort of market correction on guys like Zach LaVine and Brandon Ingram who are something less than max players, but consider themselves max players and have enough leverage over desperate teams to maybe get the max from them. So I guess it goes back to what we're talking about with the Celtics. I don't think a smart front office would ever pay these guys that kind of money, but there's not 30 smart front offices in there. So maybe both of these guys ends up on the Wizards. I don't know.
Jordan Poole, Brandon Ingram, and Kyle Kuzma, your Washington Wizards.
Kuzma in New Orleans makes some sense.
Yeah. All right, let me look at the Wizards. I gotta find it. Jordan Poole, Johnny Davis, and Brandon Ingram, your 2024-2025
Don't sleep on my guy Corey Kispert here, or Denny Avdia.
Someone good should trade for both those guys and be like 2 second-round picks for Denny Avdia, 2 second-round picks for Corey Kispert. F it.
Yep. 100%.
Those are good players who can fill real teams. So where does Ingram? Where do you think Ingram ends up? Just like you're gonna say Vegas in the desert?
Vegas. He ends up in Vegas.
He's just like hanging out. He's just hanging. He's just like becomes like I don't want to make a gambling joke in light of the Jonte Porter situation. Yeah, I don't. Part of me wants to say like Paul George like swerves us all and goes back to like the Clippers and like Ingram just ends up with the Sixers, but that feels kind of unfair to everybody. I'm gonna go Charlotte just to say Charlotte because I think that'd be weird. I want something weird. I want like something bizarre that we have to grapple with on the show this summer, Wes.
Sacramento.
You know what? Wouldn't I don't know what the trade is or how you figure that out, but like that'd be a team that's desperate enough to roll the dice on that, I think.
It's like a Barnes plus something else for another shot maker. I actually don't hate that fit for them. Somebody's going to have to play defense on that roster. But
Mike Brown's just having a heart attack on the sidelines, I think.
Yeah, maybe a team like that.
Could say Cleveland. Yeah, I think we're going to get something weird with Ingram. Wizards would be funny.
There's a version of this, too, where it's Portland, and they just trade their long-term money problem for a short-term solution where they trade, like, Jeremy Grant for Brandon Ingram and get a little bit of short-term salary relief because they're, like, inexplicably in a major payroll team, despite the fact that they won 21 games last year.
Yeah, dominating, baby.
Yeah, so maybe it's something where they say, we'll take this problem for now, understanding we have to pay this guy later, but it gives us some capital. I don't know. I'm trying to chestnut checkers this thing right now, but yeah, I'll stick with Brooklyn.
But I think you have to with Ingram. Yeah, Brooklyn just doing something random would be interesting, I guess. All right, OG and Anobi West just asked you this: is he going back to the Knicks? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
So this smells leverage play.
Yes.
All right. Free agency's here. We didn't get to our draft, but we'll move that in the future. Thanks to the breaking news, we had to talk about Monty Williams and Pascal Siakam, and it sounds like per Jake Fisher, the James Borrego to the Cavs could get finalized as early as today. So movement, we're getting movement. Drafts in a week. Free agency's coming. I think free agency might be more interesting than the finals, as I think we're might end up.
It might not be. Free agency is going to not be interesting, but the trades and the stuff like that could be.
Player movement. Let's say player movement. Yeah, the actual free agency class. I would
right. The whole where's Kelly Oubre going is not necessarily that all that interesting.
Yeah, just look at people should go look at the free agency class and realize that if your team's the one spending like their full mid level on one of these guys, that your team's the sucker this summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
Yep.
Stuff. All right, we're going to end there, though. I'm Chris Manning. That is Wes Goldberg. I'll be back on Friday with Brendan Clean to talk more about the NBA offseason, probably some WNBA as well. Until next time, enjoy the WNBA hoops. Get ready for the draft. Talk to y'all soon.